Hi, everybody. I'm Janine Turner. Welcome to Northern Disclosure, where my handsome and talented co-star Rob Morrow and I walk through every episode of Northern Exposure. So thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share the news, because I tell you what, I run into people all the time everywhere who are just starting to watch the show, and it's such a beautiful, inspirational show. So it's worthy of a share. And so it is season 3, episode 21. It's entitled Our Wedding. A great, fun show. I was a bit mesmerized watching it, lost track of time a little bit. So hello, Rob Morrow.
Hey, Janine, what's up there?
Oh, well, I just blowing and going and getting things done.
Blowing and going. I like it. It's good. Well, you look well, and this was fun. I too got lost in this episode. There's so many great moments, and it was fun that they serialized the storyline of you and I not sleeping together. They don't do that with a lot of stories, but it's fun in that Northern Exposure can do that. They can do whatever they want, which makes it fun and unique and so often unexpected. That story's not going away, and it's going to carry on for the rest of the series in a way, right?
Well, and by serialized, you mean that we had it happened in Juneau last week, and then or last episode, and then this episode we were kind of building on top of that, which doesn't always happen. Each episode's usually their own unique standalone. But this was a continuation. But they do it again in the next season.
This thing gets referenced and carried through, which is interesting. It's such a heart of the show, our dynamic, and the will they, won't they, which is, the will they, won't they, whether Maggie and Joel will actually consummate, it's like, that is the hard thing to do, to write plausible. I remember speaking last week that I said I was a little dubious that, of some of the things, but like it's to give benefit to how difficult it is to have people attracted to each other and having to not act on it, over time. It's fascinating.
And I really liked this episode. I just thought your work was sincere and honest and intriguing, and it shows our vulnerabilities of our characters, and but also the willfulness, but that both of us have. It's like we're trying. It's like we're trying. we kind of have this yin and yang and this thing going on. But it was a great episode because we had Diane Froloff, who showed up. Maurice's, the police officer.
Not Froloff, Diane Delano.
That's what I mean. That's right.
Diane Delano, who's deceased. R.I.P. Diane.
Yeah, we exchanged Christmas cards forever. I loved her. Sorry, Diane.
This episode is called Our Wedding. It's from season 3, episode 21, directed again by Nick Mark, who we had on the show. Again, directed by our producers and the writing team of Diane Froloff, who you just mentioned, and Andy Schneider. And we've got Valerie Mahaffey as Eve, and Adam back, and Richard Cummings again, who we had last week as our guest.
Everybody was in there. We had Valerie, we had Adam, we had the whole kind of reoccurring cast.
It's a fun show. I'll read the little synopsis, which I know people like to be reminded of. So it's called Our Wedding, and Adam prepares to marry Eve. At his bachelor party, the men ruminate on the differences between men and women. Meanwhile, Eve lets an enthusiastic Shelley take over wedding plans, and Maggie and Joel try to finish what they started in Juneau.
Well, there you go. That one didn't give it all away. That must be the shorter version.
That's the plot one, yeah.
Yeah, because last week it was a spoiler alert. But I thought Cynthia did a great job of being excited about the wedding, Shelley, and Cullum having the guilt trip about it, and then Adam and Eve and back and forth, and Rob, you're stuck in the middle of that, and even Elaine, Marilyn, all of her reactions, and we had Chris, of course, doing John Corbett doing the wedding, and that beautiful saying at the wedding at the end, and will they, won't. It's all this will they, won't they. Will Holling and Shelley ever get together? Will Fleischman and O'Connell ever get together? Will Adam and Eve ever get together? And it was just delightful. But I also thought that, again, all those origami, the lighting was beautiful. The origami was beautiful. It was just a really, really terrific episode. And so when you want to narrow down, I'll toss it to you for a sec, but I want to narrow down into our scenes because I remember some of those.
Yeah, I mean the cranes were beautiful. I mean the set, like I was looking at the set when you come into the church and you see those 1,000 cranes, which is a traditional, I think, Japanese for good luck, 1,000 cranes hanging from the ceiling. It was so pretty, and then the costumes and how all the different secondary and tertiary colors were used, and the men in those kind of silver pewter suits, and the women in that kind of pink purple kind of floral looking, pastel color. And everyone looked so great, and you had a different hairdo. You had these bangs, and there was something about the light, which we'll talk to our guest about, the way it was lit, and the color of the dress that just brought out your eyes. Your eyes were just like wildly, you look so beautiful. And I remember thinking that when we were shooting it, I was just like, I was able to step back, but then seeing it again, there was some really great photography going on.
I just want to add to that, though, that I thought you were extraordinarily handsome in the show too.
Oh,
and
thanks.
your hair was kind of longer. My hair is getting longer, and we just, I just, there was just such a sensuality about it all, and I really loved the writing. Thank you, Andy and Diane. That happened between the two of us, and that sexy scene on the couch.
Of course.
So the couch scene where I come in and say, let's go ahead and do it. And you're like, really? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then we kind of, start the preliminaries of that. And then I find out that you really desire me. And then I want to stop it, which was like crazy, right? But there was something, the thing that I think makes the show work is the way all of us as cast members could play the underlying yin and yang of it. The emotional layers we bring behind that. Can you imagine? You were so forgiving and had such sensitivity as well as being perturbed. I'm talking about the layers of the onion. And in that scene where I'm kind of leading you on, and I hear that you want me and I want to go, that could have come off as really coarse. That could have come off as that, like I was taking advantage of you and that I was kind of cruel or whatever. But the way I played it, which I don't even remember anything about it. I was watching, wondering how it ended because I really didn't remember, was just kind of with this innocence. It's like this fresh, kind of sweet innocence. And I think that made it work. And you don't always see that out there in acting today. Or if you were to look at that, you would say, do you want me? Do you want me? Do you want me? Fine, I'm gone. But I was just like, oh, Fleischman, do you want me? It was just so sweet that you couldn't really get mad at her. And then you were so sweet. I couldn't really, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I know what you mean. And I think innocence is a good way to describe it. I felt that there's the moment in the bar. I think it's the first time we see each other in the episode, and you're still kind of coquettish a little about thinking that we slept together, and the way you put your hair behind your ear, and you just have this sweet kind of innocence about this, and it's such a contrast to the way we think of Maggie in the world, and so to your credit, it brings it makes us fascinated with Maggie because you're just like, what is this little girl coming up? She's just a little girl wanting, to fall in love. And, it's sweet. There's a lot of great moments.
But you had it too, and Rob, and I thought you just handled it beautifully. And the smoking of the cigar scene, I thought was excellent when you're talking about women and how confusing they are. It was just beautifully written. But as for the actors out there that are listening, it's just so. And I just recently cast something. It's always fascinating to watch people who bring a completely different take on it. Something that's going from sort of their own. And I'm sure Nick Mark directed us too and guided us and whatnot. But just to not always hit the nail on the head, to not bring the obvious to it, to kind of bring all these other layers underneath.
You're right. It's tricky. It's tricky to do, and it's so refreshing when you see it. there's such pressure in making these kind of shows when you're just going in, week out, week out, that to take a chance and to go against the grain, and to get other people to sign on board with it is always you have to be really determined. And Eve does that a lot. I mean, she's got these Valerie Mahaffey, R.I.P. as well. God, they're all going, Janine.
I know.
Valerie Mahaffey passed away this year, I think.
Yeah.
When I think you have a scene with her on the street. Is it you? And then she walks and she crosses the street and walks toward the brick, and she's
No, that's
she's
with
clearly,
you.
Oh,
It's
was
a
it with
scene
me?
with you.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
right.
how
You're
could
right.
you take advantage of her like that? And you're like,
You're
how did you
right.
even know?
Right. And then
Somehow
she says,
Adam knew.
Adam knows, of course. But then she walks across the street and she's definitely kind of, I think, ad-libbing these kind of like, frustrated, like she's talking to herself, and she's so adorable. But that kind of thing too, it brings such, brings you into the character. So in a way that you don't expect.
Everybody had their vulnerabilities, right? You had your vulnerability. Maggie had her vulnerability. Adam had his vulnerability. She had her vulnerability, which really I think surfaced when she was trying to figure out whether to walk down the aisle or not. Shelley had her vulnerability. Colm had his vulnerability. Everybody had their vulnerability, and I think that was really, really fun. And again, we were the engine was cranking. Right. We're now into the end of the third season. The engine there was a comfortability about it all. But I'm so excited about our guest today. You want to introduce Dave Frederick? I always call him David.
Yes, I guess you've already given it away, but I will do that.
Okay. Well, sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. Dave Frederick, David J. Frederick, we know him as Dave, was the camera operator on Northern Exposure for, I want to say, the whole series. He is now a director of photography and has shot for so many amazing things. I'm looking at the IMDb now. He's got something called Between the Fall and Rise. He's got something called Paul on Reed, Beyond Victor Laszlo. He did Soul on Fire. He was a visual effects producer. Jay Kelly, which I love and want to talk about. He was a second unit director of photography. Business People, The Age of Disclosure, which I loved. A documentary I think I've talked to you, Janine, about aliens. And
oh, did you do that?
I did.
Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. That'd be part 2.
Reagan, Survivor, FBI International. His list goes on and ever. He's right up there around Janine and my age, and so he's just nonstop working. Steadicam on Get Shorty. It goes on, and we just adore Dave, and we're so happy to have you here, buddy. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. That was a nice intro, Janine and Rob. It's so, number one, a treat to have been invited to join the Disclosure, because what a great term too. And just to see you guys, I mean, and listen to your preamble there, because I just absolutely adored that episode. I watched the Sicily episode a little more, but because that one was the one I got to show my stuff as a director of photography in second unit and do the silver threads in the tapestry of the episode, do all of those great moments. And I'm certain you've talked about that on some podcasts. But this one in particular, and there's so many funny little hooks because, okay, first, Rob and I met in New York before Northern Exposure on a New York stage and film short. And I was getting married back then. My then pregnant fiance, who is now my ex-wife, she and I went sailing out to Shelter Island to get married by a local judge as we eloped on the sailboat I bought from Morgan Freeman. Many sidetracks on that story.
That's
but anyway,
right. I remember. It's all coming back to me.
While I was there, I am checking to see if my guest is going to come up, my best man, so to speak. And the funny thing, because this is a wedding-related story, if my best man is on his way taking the train out from New York, and my best man was a guy who was a camera assistant who I worked with all the time, Greg Collier. And so Greg Collier, I checked my answering machine and listened to the tape. And then, I had to make the call to see, he said he's on his way, but there was this call from this director of photography I'd worked with on that New York Stage and Film show named Frank Prinzi, who wanted to know if I was available to come and operate on this TV series in Washington, which is one of the few states had not been to. And I was
But
like,
wait, so you weren't there at the beginning?
I came with Frank, not with Heyman, right? And then I didn't stay there with Gordon either, because Gordon had other ideas, and I was okay with that.
Well, I missed you. Let me tell you that much. Well,
And I
you.
miss being there, a part of you. So on the answering machine was that call from Frank. So I called him. And then, of course, when Greg showed up, I said, hey, guess what, buddy? We're going to do a show called Northern Exposure. And so that was kind of an exciting way. And then quickly wrapping up this little anecdote, my new bride and I go there, and what do we need to do? We need to get clothing in order to winter up in the mountains of Snoqualmie and up in the northern exposure zone. It wasn't, the fake Alaska, as we fondly called it. So we go to the local REI, which is, I think, one of the first ones. And who do I see across the clothing racks but you, Rob? And you're like, holy shit. And you used to call me Davey all the time. Davey, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I'm on the Northern Exposure show with you. You were like, holy shit. And the face lit up, and it was just so wonderful. And I knew I was kind of in a new, wonderful home for a while. And it was a wonderful home. I had a baby. And you guys, you came to the shower, and Janine threw the baby shower. The story, and this is a wonderful little additional anecdote, is that on our crew, we had the first AD, an accountant, myself, second AD, sorry, the second AD, Rob, a transpo guy? Yeah, Billy Powell, whose dad was the transport coordinator. He was a camera truck driver. And maybe one other one, I can't remember. We're all having babies within 2 weeks of each other.
Wow.
That's right.
And Janine, you threw this beautiful, absolutely, and it was co-ed. So I walked into that room, and I never felt so much estrogen just delightfully, just weaving through the whole world. It was amazing.
That's a great
So
memory.
that was the way to show up on that show. And then, of course, it was a wonderful thing, every single thing. And this episode was terrific. And you guys were talking about all the different couples. And the story really was, of course, about Adam playing Adam. I know I've kept in touch with him. I've worked with him a lot prior after that. Adam and Eve, as well as Holling and Shelley, and then Maurice and Barbara was her name.
Yeah, Szymanski, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously you guys. So it was a really cleverly written premise.
Yeah, they blended it well, didn't they? They blended those. It was seamless. It was just seamless.
I love that Adam wanted a traditional wedding. That to me jumped out. It's like he's so full of contradictions.
So we know with the timeline of how long ago this was is because there's a physical representation of my son Colin, who was then born, and he's just turned 34.
Oh my God!
You know what I remember? I remember, David, you were on the show and you had a birthday too. There's so many things. I don't know if you've been listening, but I talk about you so often. I quote you all the time. I'll tell you why. But I remember that you had your birthday, and I think you were 33, and you said the year Jesus died. I just remember that.
Oh yeah, okay, I was 33
and I just remember
then. Yeah,
I'm 30. Didn't Jesus die at 33? I think, but it's like the year Jesus died, and I'm like, oh wow! And I just remember. So I guess you were 33 at some point when we were together. I mean, Rob and I hit 30. I think I was still 29 when we were filming this, but I guess you were somewhere in the 2 years we worked together. You hit your 33rd. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the Jesus year. That my sister was always calling it that.
The Jesus year. Oh, okay.
And then the funny thing about you asking me to comment on, and we'll talk about the show, and I'm delighted to, the wedding is that, okay, so I went many years. Colin's mother, and he had another brother who was also born on a TV series in Hawaii called Marker, with Richard Grieco for UPN, but that was in 95. so many years go by, and then it's like 27 years or so, but we did finally get separated and then divorced. And then I met this young lady who we just got married on
Oh,
December
congrats.
27th, and we
Oh,
went
wow.
to Prague. And this is her, and we rented costumes
Oh, my goodness.
from the studio, the Barandov studio, and the Age of Innocence, and paraded around. And
She's
yep,
beautiful.
Jenny McShane, gorgeous lady and very talented actress in many movies, but now she does visual effects.
Were you a single for all those years in between?
Let's just say not married.
Not married. Well, yeah, okay. That's a very
Yeah,
northern
yeah.
exposure type of term. It fits with this show. Well, congratulations. And David, Rob, if you'll just indulge me for a second, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. But David, before it was right about this episode, because it was before Sicily. It probably was this episode. I knew I was going to be doing Cliffhanger. Right. Or right around. I think I was negotiating for Cliffhanger. And then there's this amazing story about how I got out of Northern Exposure for Sicily because they weren't going to let me out. So it was Sicily when I knew I had it for sure. But I went and bought these cameras. You probably don't remember this at all. It was a Canon camera and I had interchangeable lenses. And I'm on the set with you and you look down at me and I've quoted you 1,000 million times when I teach students and whatnot. But it's like, and you said to me, remember, do you want to take a picture or make a picture? Do you remember saying that to me?
Yeah, of course. I still say that. It's the whole idea of actually committing to what height, not just, I mean, with selfies and iPhones and all the other ubiquitousness of that kind of digital photography now, it's a different story, but still, you can still make a photograph. You don't just take, it's like grabbing. Now, sometimes you need to grab an image, but
So wait, so elaborate, because Janine has said this many times, and I know what it means on the surface. But for our audience, elaborate what you mean by make a picture versus take a picture.
it's a creative decision. It's a creative instinct. Instead of grabbing just a frame, like, centering somebody in the frame, it's like, okay, what is the element of a photograph that best tells the story? Is it, the angle, the width of the field of view? So what lens are you going to choose? What are your exposures? And specifically, what height? Do you want to get low? Do you want to emphasize somebody? You want to get high, look down on it, go moving closer, go in wider. Things that you need to think about when you embrace committing something to an image that you will either love. I mean, this example right here. Now that is a photograph that was made versus just
Oh
taken.
yeah, like in the depth of field with all the arches. I really love that.
It would be the rhetoric of that, of that photograph it's the metaphor of the future, of those arches that you're going through. There's such rhetoric in that. The repetition, when I say rhetoric, I mean repetition of symbols and things like that.
And it translates to cinematography. And as a cinematographer, that's the constant dialogue in your head. And one of the cinematographers I've worked with, David Mullen, who has now been bringing delight. I think he's doing Etoile now, but we worked on Get Shorty together.
Oh, that's where you worked with Adam.
And that's where one of the places I worked with Adam. I would watch him with the director's finder, looking at it and then holding his chest and ruminating and I could see him running film clips in his head of different things that he's seen in order to have an impression and how to best do it. And I'm sitting there as the camera operator with the dolly grip going, oh my God, is this going to take another 10 minutes? Because we want to get going. We know exactly what we're going to do and what we need to do in order to get, the day made. In the sense that that's a whole nother thing. It's like in television, you learn to hone your craft with precision and speed.
Yeah, and that's what we had to learn as actors too. And I ended up taking all these pictures in Italy when I was filming Cliffhanger that I blew up because it was film and you can. Huge. There's one right here and one downstairs and all that. And it's just, you taught me that.
I was thrilled to hear that when you came back and talked to me about that.
Yes, and I showed you all the pictures, I'm sure, right?
Yep,
You taught me that, and I think that's what you and Frank did for the 2 years you were with the show. It was like every shot was beautiful. And when you left, I got so mad when a shot would be set up on an electrical cord coming out the back. You know, there just wasn't the kind of artistry given to actually creating and setting the shot to something beautiful. And when I directed, I remembered you, and there was a shot of these windmills and these old dirt roads, but there was a sunflower on the left hand side, and the cinematographer that I was working with had framed it out. And I said, "Oh no, no, no! Frame that a bit of that sunflower, on the left side." So you taught me that, David.
But also taught me a lot. I mean, if you remember, Dave, I was always hanging out in the camera room. Like that's where you would find me on the wheels, playing with the wheels, trying to learn how to write my name, you know. And you guys, you were so generous with your knowledge, and I learned a lot. I mean, I had already studied photography, but I became a director shortly after, and a lot of it was stuff that you would share with me, why something was being done, why something was being shot that way, and
I'm very honored by both of your comments on that. Thank you. And it's a collaborative, truly is a collaborative business. I mean, the success of it is the collaboration of all of the work. And when you look at Northern Exposure episodes, you see the incredible work of Woody Crocker and Ken Berg. The production designer, Woody Crocker, and then Ken Berg, the art director, who I then worked with on Felicity, just on my entry to Los Angeles. I did a couple of years on Felicity as the camera operator. And Ken was just an amazing person. I mean, building all the trebuchets and that. So I ran into John Corbett, and we were like, our jaws dropped, big hugs, and it was just so great to talk about that. And so we're texting back and forth, and I sent him a clip from the trebuchet episode, and just that whole magical, insanely clever machine that art department made.
They actually brought people over from London to build that. They assisted, but they had some real experts that they had to fly in, and a guy named John Wayne something. His name, literally John Wayne, was brought over to build it.
And they had there were 3 takes, which we flew a weighted coffin, and there was one practice that they did, after they set it up. And did you know all 4 of those caskets were on top of each other?
What do you mean?
They flew through the air, and they landed in the exact same spot.
Oh, wow. So the precision, yeah.
The precision and accuracy of that, historically maniacal war machine was just so well done.
Is the great line from that is not what you fling, it's the fling itself.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So starting something new isn't just hard. It can be terrifying to put so much effort into something you're not entirely sure will work. It can be hard to take that leap of faith, but it's easier to make that leap when you have a partner like Shopify on your side. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, including household names like Death Wish Coffee and Magic Spoon. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online storefront that matches your brand's style. And you may ask, what if people haven't heard about my brand? Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/northern. Go to shopify.com/northern. That's shopify.com/northern. So I want to just read a little. Janine loves to write down some of the lines from the show, and I don't know if you wrote this one down, Janine, but it's pretty great. And I think I may be a little out of order because I had to get it all. But you are going off, Janine, Maggie, pissed off at me when you find out that we didn't sleep together, which I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't hear. And so when you finally realize it, you say, I'm pleased it happened. You miserable, sadistic, terrible creep. You maggot fly, a pimple, a boil, an abscess. You're a snake, you're a rat, you're a pig, you're a slime, you're scum, you hateful, despicable worm.
That went on some, yes, and then there were, and I guess then you started throwing things at him,
I
and the one thing
did.
I noticed is you had the Band-Aid over your left eye, but the thing that hit you was
Hit you on
over
the
here, so
right
I was like,
eye.
No
"Oh,
way.
okay.
Oh wow.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
I didn't catch
Yeah, yeah."
that. That's funny.
But 1 inch, and you could have taken an eye out. Could have put an eye out. But
Yeah,
that,
the writing,
the
the
preamble
writing.
to that was the scene when you were coming out in Ruth
Ruth Ann.
Ann.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I wanted to talk about was these amazing 300-foot long dolly shots that we would do. And then there
Right.
would be the moment that you would have to pause and then we'd, go back and the reverse angle on it. And that was how we got through our days because we did these huge, and those are like 3-page dialogue scenes, if not more.
And they were fun to act, like that one has me coming out of my office, takes me all the way across the street, and then we pick up, and it just keeps going on, and then I think it even reverses back. It's they were hard to set up. They took a long time because back then it was it was tracks and wedges and it made it so cinematic, because it wasn't just cuts.
And it wasn't just the camera; it was also the BFLs, which is the big frickin' lights that
Right.
were on also a dolly moving in the old days, like on Giant and How the West Was Won, and those things when you had these beautiful lighting things on, and we're doing exterior shots, and so that was pretty amazing.
And you get to see the town. You see the dogs come through. There's so much life in the town.
And we orchestrate the wipes, the guy with the ladder, just as we're going this way, the ladder's going that way. And pretty amazing. So that was pretty great. But George Santopietro, I wanted to run
Yes,
that.
I was just thinking about
George.
George Santopietro.
George, the dolly grip, just was so, number one of the strongest guys in Seattle. Just his arms were thicker than my legs. But he was one of the most talented dolly grips I've ever worked with historically, and just a terrific guy.
And a great guy. Yeah.
And you get so spoiled when we had the luxury of working with one another. Some of the greatest writers, great cast, great crew, great cinematographers. And then you do things later and it's just like you watch how things fall apart and they don't work the way
the magic.
They miss the magic. They miss the magic. And I'm editing something right now. I'm like, oh, we didn't get that camera shot. We missed the magic. And the magic was there. It's a wonderful way of putting it with the great team that we had. And I was getting my hair done right before this episode, and she hadn't seen Northern Exposure before. And Rob and I, you and I walked out of Ruth Ann's store and had our, walk and talk. And I said to her, this is an iconic Fleischman O'Connell type of scene, because we had so many of those, didn't we, Rob?
Yeah. And they were so precise because you had to, if one of us messed up a line, it was back to one, and you'd look at George Santo, you'd look at his eyes and think, and it was either freezing or boiling, and he'd have to push that. How much does a dolly with a camera and rig weigh? I mean, what? Like a lot, right?
Well, I was skinnier back then, but we had the camera, and those were something called pipe dolly. So it was a sled that had roller skate wheel chassis things that then the whole thing would go in there. So the dolly would go on that, because no, you don't want to run the railroad track with all the wedges and stuff. You want to put down the big wide platform, because typically also the sound man will be on that with the boom.
Glenn Sound, I called him. Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn. Yep.
And the dolly grip is pushing the whole thing. I mean, usually a couple guys, he's got help. They have the pipes coming off the side, right?
Right. Especially if it's a fast move, because that's the better way to do the fast moves. And so, so that George was terrific. But then somebody else I wanted to shout out to was our first AD, Jim Charleston.
Oh, he was wonderful.
And he's a director as well.
Yeah, we
at this
had
point.
him on.
But you did? Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, but I don't know if talk about quotes. Janine, you were fond of the quotes, and one I use also is his, because you said whether or not it's when we're shooting on location there. One of his things would say, "Hurry up, the pass is closing."
Yes, I was just gonna say that. He would say that the pass is closing.
We gotta go, because at one point I think we did. I mean, that I don't know if that season or one of the other ones, we did actually. The pass did close, and we had to stay over. And the following day, and this is another credit to production designer Woody Crocker. The following day, we had to shoot in your office or Ruth Ann's store, and they were able to, or the radio station able to jump into on location studios filming.
Right, because they had three or four sets that were reproduced on sound stages. My office, Ruth Ann's, and the radio station. So you could shoot either, depending on the schedule and logistics, you could either shoot the scenes interior on location, or you could shoot them on the sound stage.
And it was like, and the furniture had to be trucked back and forth. So the lead department, in the set decorators. I don't think there was two sets of your version of
I didn't realize
the famous desk, in the president's office, but your desk
the
and all the other
Resolute
stuff
desk.
that's in there. Yeah, the Resolute desk. Good for you. But the other thing that he said that I always use is, "Let me check my list of excuses." That's a Jim Charleston original.
I love that. I'm going to steal that one.
That's really good.
No, if the producer was going, "Jim, why are we going? What's going on? Let me check my list of excuses."
Yeah, it is so rare. It's so rare to find a first assistant director who's basically the one who runs the show. He's the one, the trains run on time with the first assistant director that has a sense of humor that can just execute it in such a way that everybody feels comfortable, and yet it gets done at the same time. He was a true Jim. He really was. And I want to talk about, Greg, who did the focus pull, and how different it was back then. I mean, now they shoot a laser at you, but back then it was actually, taking this tape, the tape.
Cloth tape measure
out to measure it, and then Frank would come up with his little light and go like this, and it was just so different. And I was watching the show with my hairdresser again, who had never seen the show, and I look at the beauty of film. I still don't think we've talked about this, Rob and I, but you can't really replace it. But I kind of miss all that old fashioned stuff. Now it's like they point a laser at you, and it's a little bit different. It doesn't kind of have the charm it used to have. But Greg always just did the camera pulling.
Yeah, he was great. Well, I kind of brought him along with me. He turned me down on Driving Miss Daisy, which was my last job as a focus puller, because he had a bunch of commercials to do. But he did a bunch of movies with me as my second assistant. And then I knew him as a good focus puller, so I could pop him up into B camera. And then it was a natural for me to say, "Hey, come and do this TV show with me." And
Greg was a great guy.
Great
part
guy.
of the family. We just loved him.
I introduced him to his girlfriend there, which became, they're still married. Sandra,
they're still together. It's amazing. Yeah, we had Mimi on a couple episodes ago, and she was talking about that. Yeah.
Yep, that was me. I did that because I thought she was great, and I was like, "Yes, I did." But Rob, there's one thing that we're patting each other on the back, and I wanted to say one thing, and I use this as a teaching moment when I talk to. I do a variety of different teaching things at a lot of the universities and at the NAB and wherever they ask me.
What's the NAB?
NAB is National Association of Broadcasters, and so it's a big Las Vegas, fills the entire convention center, every floor space available of all the tech. And, it's broadcasting and all that stuff. But so I do for Chapman Leonard, the big Dolly and Crane company, I do how to break down a script from script to screen and put it on stage, and what equipment you're going to need, and when you break it down for either stunts or romance, comedy, whatever it is, the scene. I would just do a scene and just what does it take to do it?
You're talking about from a technical perspective.
Yes, artistic, technical perspective as a director of photography. And because we're responsible in our prep, for getting all that stuff orchestrated,
Right, because you have to order, what camera equipment, what lights you might need, all that, yeah.
Yep. And so one of the things I always, and I impress, and even on this last film, it's like working with the actors. It is so critical, the relationship, to be able to understand the creative potential, because this business is so myopic. Everybody is in it for their own game. And it's like, I worked with one DP on a thing, Women's Murder Club. And I came back from a lot from getting my Steadicam ready, and all the lights were in the frame. And I said, John, how am I going to keep that stuff out of frame? I've got a walk and talk 5-shot of, and of all these, Cynthia Nixon was one of them, and a bunch of actors. Anyway, and he goes, David, boom up. And I was like, what? And he goes, it's a selfish business. Because he goes, I have 5 women I have to make gorgeous. And I need all of these little, the what do you call it? The Chinese lanterns, because that's the soft light he liked to use. But anyway, selfish business. So, um, so I'm just going back to it. So what I learned from you, Rob, was that in deference to everybody has their preparation. Everybody needs to have their ingredients to what is going to make it work for them. So everybody doesn't realize, but when you're not on the set, you're learning your lines. You're working out what you're going to do when you're in front of the camera. And that's a lot of concentration. And to not respect that is completely crazy. So I think you had a longer turnaround for some reason or the other. Thank God for the 12-hour turnaround.
Thank God for the 12-hour turnaround. Well, that means that actors get mandated through our union, Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA. We get 12 hours from when we leave the set to when we have to be back.
Or they pay a lot of money.
Or they pay a lot of money. And I remember when I was a really young actor, I would be so grateful to get those forced calls, they're called, because you'd pick up $1,000 for, and I'd always be like, yeah, I'll take it. But then at a certain point, you're like, no, I'm not doing any forced calls, because you can't breathe. You need to rest and learn all your lines for the next day.
And it gives, as Dave was saying, it gives the crew a little bit of time too.
But so anyway, so we're all at our call time, and there's a new director, and I'm not going to remember his name, but a younger, newer director, not so young and not so new because experienced, but he was a TV director, and he was a guy who knew he had to get his day done. So Rob had a later call and was, so we assembled, and typically, so everybody knows, is we have a rehearsal, a blocking rehearsal, actor director rehearsal, and a blocking rehearsal, and then a technical rehearsal, so everybody gets called in, all the keys, and everybody gets to watch it so that we can see where, the microphone has to go and where the lighting is going to go, blah, blah, blah. And so the director wanted to jump right in and do all that stuff. And he goes, no, I have all this broken down. It was a scene in your office on the stage. And so, that for us, lighting was pretty easy. We had these gigantic maxi brutes that would go through like 3 layers of diffusion, and then big flags that would block off to make it shadowed and shape it. So all the lights, the walls weren't too bright. But here's what happened was Rob finally comes to set. He's in his costume, and I believe, and he shows up on set, and the director had the ball, and I recommended against it. I swear to God, Rob, I recommended against it. And I said, Rob's not going to like this. He goes, no. And he worked with Peter White, I believe, your stand-in for years.
That's his last name. We couldn't last weekend. I was trying to. He showed up in the last episode. They let him have a scene, and I couldn't remember his last name. Great guy, Peter White.
Wonderful, and he knew you, and he was like, oh my God. And he looked at me like, I'm going to get in trouble. I said, don't worry. It's not your fault. So the director says, yeah, you're going to be over here, and you're going to go over there. And they're okay. Now let's start to light it. And you want, and their second ADs, and he would say, and he called for marks. The director called for marks. And Marilyn was there, but, it's just, you just had 3 moves. You walked in, Rob. You took one, you said hello to everybody. And then you looked down in the tape, and there is I think you were red because you were number 1 on the call sheet. Do you know that? Red and is always number 1, right?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yep. And blue is number 2. And so you were probably always blue, I think. Do you remember, Janine, what color your marks were?
I don't. I know I was number 3 in the call sheet because I think Barry was technically.
Oh, you were 3?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What color was I? When would I was?
Yellow.
Yellow. Okay. I was yellow.
Anyway, that's kind of one of those little things. But so you walk in, you saw the marks down there, and you said, oh, you did this with Peter. Okay, well, Pete, you got the side, you know the lines, you do the scene. You walked out. And you just turned the back, and you just gave your back to the guy. You walked back to your trailer, and it was about an hour at least. And I think whoever was in charge, whoever's the parents at the day, whether it was Alan or
Matt.
Matt, two lovely guys would come at there, a little hand wringing at you
By the
outside your.
way, that's an asshole move and unnecessary. And I was a jerk, for doing that if I did that in that way. And I probably did because I was very idealistic at the time. And it is not the way it doesn't serve. And so even though I may have been right, it wasn't the right way to deal with it. And so now what I would say is, listen, here's what would work better for me. Can we accommodate that? And if he'd say no, I'd say, okay, well, next time, maybe let me know what you're planning so I can weigh in on it. But that's the way to do it for you young actors out there, not the way I did it.
Well, but to be really fair, it's disrespectful.
Two wrongs don't make a right is my point. So yes, I was maybe disrespected, although I don't think that was the intention of that director. I think it was just his economy and trying to get the day. But me disrespecting him back didn't help. And as you say, we lost an hour, which kills everybody. Then, Janine's coming in and waiting like, why am I not shooting? And, it's not good.
Well, we learn a lot in 30 years. And as, we're in our 60s now, and we can look back and say, oh, I guess I could have done that differently. But I think what would happen is that we would talk about this a lot. A lot of the USC film school directors would come out and they would know how to work the cameras, but they didn't take enough time to teach those new directors coming out of USC how to work with actors. You really, and the best directors are the ones who would go in and take acting classes. They would actually immerse themselves into what is the perspective from the actor's standpoint. And I think that's what Rob and you and all of us learn as we become veterans in the business is how, the collaboration and to look at things from other people's points of view and what they need. Okay, well, the camera might actually need the two of us squished together here, even though it doesn't feel quite right. But it's once again, it's that mutual respect and that collaboration that comes around with everybody. So sometimes that was probably a good lesson for that director, actually. Go, oh, okay. I shouldn't block it without taking time to consult about how the actors feel, because that was a big part of it.
It was his first day.
Right. I'm in the DGA mentor program, so I'm mentoring a young coming director, and I keep telling him, go, he is actually taking acting classes and when I made this movie once where Martin Scorsese was in it and he was acting, and I was like, why are you acting? And he said, the only reason I'm here is because I want to know what you guys go through. I want to feel it, and so I really tell any of you would-be directors out there, go study acting so you understand, because it's tricky to do what we have to do, and to do it day in, day out, on that schedule.
Right. And the director comes in with a list of kind of shots where he thinks he wants, he or she are thinking they need that. They need to be prepared and have their shot list. But then the great test is then to bring the actors in and then all the rest of the crew and say what works. It's that ability. It's one of my favorite words in the world, right? Is to collaborate. It's that ability to say, okay, but you have to think of everyone, because it is awkward as an actor if to walk in and say, wait, I'm standing, that doesn't, wait, what? You want me to stand there? Especially when we're about 40, 50, 60 episodes into it. I mean, any director that steps into that world with actors and a crew who've been working together for that amount of time, who just know their character inside and out, that was it's a scary position for a director to walk into, an acting troupe like that knows exactly what they want and how they want it.
As a cinematographer, when you're working and you're watching the first blocking rehearsal, I always take a clue from where the director is standing. Now, that's going to be probably where it is. However, if the director has the windows behind him, I would say very gently, have you looked at it from over here? And come around and say, if you put the windows in the background, well, we actually have a, motivation, blah, blah, blah. Oh, sorry. It's just because they're just thinking about the people moving in space.
Dave, let me ask you what having watched the show, I guess you watched it last night, right? Or today, what jumped out at you in terms of the way things were shot and direct? Like, I mean, the beauty of the cranes in the church, right? That was beautiful, little sequence. The dolly shots you talked about.
Well, the big difference between stuff we're looking at now on streamers and is all the hard-edged sharpness and the way that the film that we used back then, the Kodak film that you used back then, and the lenses and the motion picture cameras, the way that they actually captured the images is completely not there now.
Wait, you're saying that the old way was softer edges?
So pretty. I mean, so pretty. I mean, Janine, you were talking about that scene in when you show up at Rob's house and you're like, let's do it. And then you start making out on the couch. We had a high angle shot looking down at you that was just so, if you don't mind me saying, creamy and soft and gorgeous. We were very sensitive as to the right angle of the camera so we don't see under your neck and all of things, and the soft light and just the shape of the light and just the right amount of pillows and all those things. Those things you do and still in these days. However, the way that the film works and the focus pulling and just the operation with the camera with an eye on the eyepiece versus looking at a monitor, which is a lot bit easier and less neck injury. However, I just did a feature film, and I was looking through the camera, and it was just so wonderful to see the flickering image again. And so when I watched the episode last night, seeing that scene there, seeing the big long dolly shots, knowing that there was a big light on it, not going with the available light because you can with the sensors now, because we're shooting at film speeds that are like 100, 125 ASA day exterior, and you need to put some light down on it, the Ektachrome or even just the normal tungsten film. And all of the night interiors or the night exteriors, just beautiful, beautiful filmic lighting. So that's what jumps out, Rob, to answer that question, is the difference of the techniques that are used back then and now. And I'm so happy that I didn't have to assist as a camera assistant in the digital day, because now this cameras are like a spaghetti factory. So many cables going all over the place. And the only thing that we had on our northern exposure was a power cable. So it was a hand on the lens. It was not remote control focus, hand on the lens. Greg was next to the camera.
There was an intimacy.
Exactly. And when you finish the scene, and I likened this when I was a camera assistant, the first person you look up at is the focus puller.
It's a skill that I've never been able to understand. How we're talking about a guy who's standing next to the camera and his hand on a wheel. He's not looking through the lens. He's got his hand on the wheel that controls the focus, and he's gauging by his sense of where someone moves in the frame, of how incrementally he has to dial the frame. If they're on a long lens, it's that much more crucial. And it's a job I still to this day, I mean, I've done a zillion things. I've did something I've never understood. And it's so hard because I remember when I first started shooting in Canada, we used to have to do 10 because the crews weren't deep at that point. Now they have deep crews, meaning there's every company has experience in the ranks. And so we would have to do 10 takes because the focus puller, you'd be like, wait, what? Another take because it's out of focus. And so it's a real skill that I guess is waning.
I looked at those shots on the couch and I thought how beautiful they are. Those were so beautiful. And it's true and it just doesn't come organically. I mean, you're right. It was the angle, the pillows, the light, coming at the right angle. And as an actor or an actress, those can make or break your entire career. You know what I mean? Especially as a woman. And so the fact that you took all that time, because I did think those were pretty dreamy shots. Those were that, and even on Rob, and it just made the whole thing, it made the whole scene so sensuous, and it made it then so sweet. And it's kind of like Rob and I were talking about at the beginning, to come full circle. It's all like everybody putting their art to the form that made that. If you had shot that in a really bad camera angle or bad lighting, it wouldn't really matter how sweet I was. It wasn't going to have the same effect than when you put it all together. And Rob was and it just was a very sexy, sensuous, beautiful scene. And I'm really glad you described how that happens, because it's not just plopping a camera there. And unfortunately, it was. Thank you for describing that.
And the shot in the brick. One other thing, talking about focus and camera use. It's now Shelley has been given her task as being the maid of honor, and so she's now preparing the famous blue and white umbrellas on the cupcakes. And so the shot opens up with a beautiful close up of the tray of cupcakes, and then the focus drops. Same frames, focus drops to Holling coming through the back of the kitchen, coming up to talking to a two-shot, which was a delightful. And God, John is just such a wonderful, wonderful actor. His subtleties of his thing, and the setup for the neck thing, and Adam doing his chiropractic adjustment.
I think he actually did them for real. Adam used to give me adjustments. I think he really did them.
He learned his process because it was in a scene. He had to learn it. But then for the three things that he spouted out to Valerie at the end, who did I marry? What am I doing to myself? And, the fact that he times her food and he does physiotherapy. I was like, this is why I'm the best husband,
I love what he says. He says, why was I cursed with this misery? Why was I cursed with this misery? You're a knife in my heart. And then he takes a great beat, only the way Adam can. And then he says, let's just discuss this later and get married.
Right.
Well, and you got to give it to the writing. You got to give it to Andy and Diane too. I mean,
So
if it's not
good.
on the page, it's not on the stage. And I think this is one of their one of their greatest episodes. It was just really, really there. But yeah, I just thought it was performed well, shot well, written well. The music was great. You listen to all that jazz music going on in the background.
God, but jazz to Vivaldi, to like swing, to the what's his name, Benny Goodman.
And by the way, the last shot, talk about cinematography, is so, this, I guess the last sequence with the bouquet going through the air and then it hits the ground. No one wants to go near it. And it ends on that. It's a beautifully directed little sequence.
And even Corbett doing his one, I'm going to get my foot right in that and get out, because he's the last image.
And I love what he says. He says when he's marrying them, the way he finishes the ceremony, he just looks at them both and goes, you guys cool with that?
Yep.
right. Well, I'll tell you a little tidbit at my daughter's wedding. She was married in 2024. She threw the bouquet from the balcony and it fell on the floor. And here are all these girls, all of her bridesmaids wanting to get married next. I ran and picked it up. I'm like, I got it. It's pretty funny.
Did it work?
No, I'm not married yet, so I guess it hasn't worked. But, it ain't over till it's over, as my dad used to say. Yogi Bear 57. But I gave it to one of her best friends who's desperate to get married. So I handed over the torch.
Did she get married yet?
No.
All right, so much better.
Maybe we all should have stepped back from it. Actually.
It was a wonderful, though, that ending of that episode was just absolutely perfect,
Yeah,
that was just the best thing. And then one thing when I enjoyed seeing Chris at the radio station, John, and working with John, which those were really, he had pages which huge paragraphs.
Amazing. I'm so amazed with all of his speeches now, watching them in retrospect, at just how wonderfully delivered they were. And I remember he was always free, he'd come in and just be like, oh my, he'd have such a huge load of lines, and it ended up being so perfect.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I had a hand in that. You know how it happened? So I started out in radio, and I said, and we're doing these very complicated dolly shots, which are like in that small space. So they'd have to build these platforms in order to do these circular tracking shots, which would involve a slight zoom in, zoom out in order to keep the size and all that. And they were tricky, and start high and get low. So again, staying on the eyepiece, they were gymnastics, and I was felt really accomplished at the end, but then he would have a big kerfuffle. And I was like, okay, how are we gonna handle this? So I go up to John. I said, John, want to let you something, is when I was in radio, we're behind a mic like you are, but we're reading nearly everything. And so what if we do this? What if we take your little scripts, your little sides, chop them up and put them into different spaces? Because he doesn't need to read them. He just needs the reminder, you know? And he's like, and you're shuffling a piece of paper around and, and he was like, oh, you don't see them? You won't see them? I went, no, we're going to make sure we don't. And it's like, holy shit. So boom. That was it. The connection was made. And it was just in order to reinforce him while he does memorize them, but it's a lot of stuff going on that, remembering the timing and all that. So those little things were really happy.
A lot of big names, big philosophy. It's a lot of crazy things that they utilize
Nietzsche,
in that technique.
Kierkegaard.
Well,
yes.
now we know. Now we know that's a great behind the scenes tip.
I mean, I just worked with Billy Zane on this feature, and he was suffering us through cue cards. And it was like, oh, God. And he was like, no, they have to be there. And you've got to do them quietly. And I'm like, okay. But he's a lovely guy. And then Tyrese Gibson was there, and he wore an earwig. And he had a friend who was on the other end of that, just whispering little reminders.
What I've learned is whatever works. If it works, it works.
I would memorize lines by spelling something in my head, the same way I did essays. If I had a subject and I had to write 4 paragraphs, I would, do a anagram. What's it called? Anagram. But you'd spell something. So I'd spell. Let's say 5 paragraphs, smile. So S would stand for this, and I would go in and do that. And I would do that with a lot of the lyrics. It's like, okay, the L comes before the M, not lyrics, but the lines. L comes before the M, and then there's the N, or that's an alliteration, and I'm going to do da. That's how I would do it in my head. I would make associations of the different lines.
You guys always came to work very prepared. And Rob, you were always off book.
Yeah, that's just the way I came up, but that's not the only way to do it. But I got to say, David, we got to wrap it up. But man, I think we could go on for hours,
Likewise.
So I hope we come together on some project or socially, and we can just continue to chat.
Come back on our show.
You guys are directors. You can pull the strings.
All right.
Yeah, come back on the show. It'd be because your stories were fantastic. And we'll close with showing everyone at my 30th birthday party. David and his wife showed up with this beautiful birdhouse. Look at this.
So cool.
It was your first wife. It was Sandra's.
Sonia.
I always keep calling her Sandra. Sonia's brother, right?
Yeah, Eric, who built that. Yeah, he was very handy.
David said, well, has a bird ever nested in it? And I said, well, I never put it outside. It's too beautiful. So I have it on display.
Well, maybe you can find a place under an eave to mount it.
Yeah, well, there's a little wren out there that just tried to nest in my my blanket that was out there drying. So she may really like that. I may put that out for her this year. And if a tornado comes, I'm just going to run out and grab it, bird and all.
Oh, jeez. Well, thank you very much for inviting me along. It was a really nice journey and so nice to share all this stuff.
Great to see you, David. Rob, always so much fun. So we're going to wrap this episode. We'll see you next week. We have Cheryl Block, one of our fabulous producers who was there from day one. She's going to be on our show next week to talk about Sicily, which was the episode that was where went back in time. So we look forward to that. And so for now, we're going to wrap the show. And this is Northern Disclosure with O'Connell and Fleischman.
I think it should be Fleischman O'Connell.
In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.